3 weeks after my husband died, I sat in a lawyer's office and watched my life get handed to someone else. Not his business partner. Not his child. His sister. Clara, the woman who said she was here to help while I was grieving, had just inherited everything. And I mean everything. But what no one knew was that I had something too. A sealed envelope. And the moment I opened it, everything changed. If you're someone who's ever been blindsided by someone you trusted, stay with me. This story is for you. And if you want more raw, real stories like this, hit subscribe. Now, let me take you back to the moment everything started unraveling. I thought I was ready. I really did. 3 weeks after Owen's funeral, I found myself walking into a law office that smelled like old wood and lemon polish. The kind of place that felt more like a museum than somewhere your entire life could change in an instant. I remember thinking the doorknob was too cold for late spring. I remember the receptionist's polite smile. And I remember Clara's perfume, sweet, expensive, too strong. She was already there, of course, seated perfectly upright on the tufted leather sofa, legs crossed, black dress unwrinkled like she hadn't cried a single tear. And maybe she hadn't. I tried not to resent her for that. Grief looks different on everyone. At least that's what people say when they don't know who they're talking to. I sat beside her. She smiled gently, like we were here for some boring tax form, not the final words of my husband's life. Not the thing he left behind for the people who mattered most. The lawyer, Mr. Everett, entered with a thick manila folder in his hands. He was calm, polite, not cold but detached. I suppose you have to be, when you spend your days reading the last wishes of the dead. He greeted us both, sat down behind the desk and opened the file. The moment his fingers touched the first page, my palms began to sweat. "I'll get right to it," he said. Per the last will and testament of Owen Jennings, dated March 6, 2024. My ears started ringing before he finished the sentence. March 6. That was 16 days before Owen died. The entirety of the Jennings estate, including all real estate, business assets, financial holdings and personal accounts, are to be transferred to Clara Jennings. I didn't breathe. I didn't blink. I think my heart actually stopped for a full second, just to process what I'd heard. Clara gasped softly beside me. Her hand flew to her chest like she couldn't believe it either. "Oh my God," she whispered. "Mara, I didn't know." She reached for my hand but I couldn't feel it. Not her fingers, not my own. It was like my body had turned to stone. Her voice trembled in that delicate way people do when they want sympathy. And it worked. Mr. Everett nodded slowly. Like this was all just unfortunate paperwork. Like I was supposed to smile and nod too. But inside I was screaming. Owen and I had been married for 12 years. We built our life from the ground up. We turned a tiny design studio into a boutique brand known all over Seattle. We shared everything. Bank accounts. Dreams. Nights too long to sleep and mornings too early to breathe. He used to say, "We're two halves of the same vision." So why would he give my half to her? Clara. His sister. The woman who came to help during his final months. The one who brought wine when I asked for silence. The one who insisted on managing his medication schedule even though she wasn't a nurse. The one who kept insisting I needed to rest more, while slowly taking over every conversation in our house. I stared at the legal papers on the desk, each word sharp like a knife. Owen's signature was there in black ink, with that messy left slant he always had when he was in a hurry. I wanted to believe it was forged. But it wasn't. It was real. Clara turned toward me, her brows drawn together in a perfect little frown. "I swear I had no idea. I thought he'd left everything to you." Her voice cracked but her mascara didn't. Her earrings caught the light just right when she leaned closer. A teardrop diamond glinting like a lie. Mr. Everett cleared his throat again. "Is there any documentation or concern you'd like to raise, Mrs. Jennings?" I wanted to say yes. I wanted to stand up and scream. "This is wrong. He wouldn't do this to me." But all I managed was a whisper. "No, not yet." 'Cause I wasn't sure. Not yet. But something deep inside me stirred. Not rage, not confusion, something older. Something sharper. That flicker of instinct we women learn to ignore because people call us dramatic or overthinking. But that day, sitting in that leather chair, watching Clara act her part like a seasoned actress. I didn't ignore it. I remembered. A sealed envelope, given to me by Owen, 3 days before he died. He had pressed it into my hands with shaking fingers and whispered, "Open this if something doesn't feel right." And nothing about this felt right. I shifted in my seat. Clara's hand was still hovering, waiting for mine. I didn't take it. I pulled away slowly, carefully. Her smile faltered for just a moment. Just enough. Then I reached into my purse. Fingers trembling, I found the envelope still sealed with red wax. His initials, OJ, pressed into the back. I had carried it with me every day, afraid to open it, afraid of what it might say. But now I was afraid of what it might confirm. "I do have something," I said quietly, placing the envelope on the polished oak table. Clara's eyes darted to it. If I'm being honest, I never saw Clara coming. She was always the type of woman who walked into a room like she owned the lighting. Impeccably dressed. Unshakably calm. She could make a compliment sound like a favor and a favor feel like a debt you'd never repay. But she was Owen's sister. She had a past with him long before I did. They grew up in Connecticut 3 years apart. Their parents died young. It was just the two of them for a long time. She used to tell me they were two against the world. I used to believe that was sweet. When Owen was diagnosed, she flew in the very next morning. First flight from Boston, she said. Showed up in a black wool coat, heels too tall for hospital hallways, and a gift basket with lavender tea and a sleep mask I never used. She hugged me like I was a porcelain vase she didn't want to chip, whispered, "You don't have to do this alone anymore." I remember thinking, thank God. I need help. That's the thing about grief. It makes you grateful for anyone who shows up, even if they arrive with quiet knives in their purse. First, Clara did everything right. She organized the pill chart, called the insurance company, updated our calendar with all of Owen's appointments. She even fielded client emails for the design studio when I couldn't lift my head off the kitchen table. People said, "You're lucky to have her." I nodded. I agreed. I told her thank you more times than I can count. But it started with little things. One afternoon, I came home early from the pharmacy. I'd forgotten Owen's supplements. I walked through the front door and found the two of them in the living room. Talking fast, low, urgent. Clara was holding his phone. Owen looked startled. Like a kid caught sneaking out after curfew. He smiled too fast, too wide, and she said, "We were just sorting through some emails. Nothing big." I should have asked more. Pressed harder. But I didn't. I was too tired. A week later, I went to message a client, only to find a draft email already written. It was from Owen's account, but I hadn't written it. It referenced a meeting I didn't know about. The writing was polished, clinical, not his tone. And in the sent folder? Dozens of messages I had never seen. Clara had his passwords. That much I knew. She offered to help him keep up with communication. She was always so efficient, so helpful, and somehow always one step ahead of me. Then came the dinner. It was a Thursday night. I'd spent the day helping Owen through a rough round of meds. He was asleep in the bedroom. I walked into the kitchen and found Clara at the table, laptop open, a printed document beside her. It was a copy of our business registration papers. I asked her what she was doing, and she smiled without flinching. "Just updating a few things for tax season," she said. Our taxes were always done by our accountant. She knew that. I looked closer. Her name was typed at the bottom of the page. Clara Jennings, Interim Operations Lead. My name wasn't on it. I asked her about it and she laughed. "Just placeholder language," she said. "In case anything happens to either of you. Don't worry, it's just a draft." I didn't sleep that night. The next morning, she was in the kitchen making smoothies and humming like she hadn't just erased me from my own business the night before. Still, I said nothing. I think part of me didn't want to believe what I was seeing. That Clara, the woman who stood by Owen's hospital bed and kissed his forehead, could be drawing up contingency plans behind my back. That she could look me in the eye and say, "We're family," while slowly rewriting the script to make herself the lead. But the moment that truly broke the illusion came 2 nights before Owen passed. I found a voice memo on his phone while charging it. He must have hit record accidentally. It was short, 30 seconds, but it said everything. "Owen. Clara, I don't think I want to go through with this. Clara, don't be dramatic. You're doing what's necessary. Mara will understand. Eventually. And then silence. I stared at the screen for what felt like hours. The file had no title. No date. Just a timestamp and a weight that dropped straight into my chest. Played it again. And again. Until I could hear nothing else. Eventually I'd understand? Or eventually I'd never know? That was when I remembered the envelope. The one Owen had handed me in the quiet of the hospital room. His voice barely more than breath. Open this if something doesn't feel right. I hadn't opened it yet. I couldn't. Felt too final. But Clara's voice in that memo? That was the beginning of the end of my silence. 'Cause now I knew. She hadn't just helped. She had maneuvered. Shifted. Controlled. All behind the soft fabric of sisterly love. Like silk hiding a scalpel. And the worst part? She almost got away with it. They say grief clouds your judgment. That it wraps around you like fog and blurs the sharp edges of truth. But sometimes grief clears the fog. Sometimes it strips away everything else, and what's left is instinct. And mine had been screaming for weeks. That's why, when I sat in that law office and heard Owen's estate being handed to Clara like a gift bag, my body didn't freeze. It listened. It remembered. The envelope. It had been tucked in my handbag every day since the night Owen gave it to me. 3 days before he died, I sat by his hospital bed as the machines beeped slow and steady. The room was dim. The kind of dim where shadows look like memories. He had been quiet most of the evening. Tired. Slipping in and out of sleep. But around 2 a.m., his eyes fluttered open, and for the first time in hours, he was alert. Like really there. Not drugged, not fading, present. Mara, he whispered. My wallet. The inside pocket. I reached for it without thinking. Inside, behind an old family photo and a worn coffee punch card, was a thick envelope. Cream-colored. Sealed with red wax. His initials, OJ, pressed into it like a final stamp. He looked at me for a long time. No smile. No explanation. Just this steady look, like he was memorizing me. Open this only if something doesn't feel right, he said. That was all. And then he closed his eyes. I almost asked why. But I couldn't. I was afraid of the answer. After he passed, I carried that envelope like a stone in my bag. I couldn't bring myself to open it. Not because I didn't want to know what was inside, but because some part of me already did. It was more than a goodbye. It was a warning. And on the day Clara's name replaced mine in every part of the life Owen and I had built, that warning became impossible to ignore. Back in the office, I placed the envelope on the lawyer's desk, hands trembling but steady enough to send a message. I wasn't going to be silent anymore. Clara didn't say a word. She just froze. For the first time since all this began, her performance slipped. Mr. Everett, the attorney, leaned forward. What is this? He asked gently. Owen gave it to me, I said. 3 days before he died. He said I'd know when to open it. He picked it up carefully, turned it over in his hands. The seal cracked with a soft snap that echoed louder than it should have. He opened it slowly, revealing several documents. A few pages of legal stationery. A letter handwritten. He read in silence. I couldn't breathe. I could hear the antique clock on the wall ticking away the seconds, like it was counting down to something I couldn't name. My hands were cold. My stomach was a pit. But my mind? It was fire. Clear, alive, and ready. Mr. Everett's eyes moved quickly, then slowed. His eyebrows knit together as he flipped from one page to another. He leaned back, expression unreadable. Then he looked at me. This document, he said slowly, is legally binding. It's a notarized, witnessed amendment to Owen's original will. I blinked. What does that mean? It means, he said, glancing briefly at Clara, that it overrides the will we read earlier. For a moment no one said anything. Then Clara laughed. A short, bitter sound. Are you kidding? That was handwritten. You're really going to believe that over a signed, official document? Mr. Everett didn't flinch. This is official. It was signed, witnessed, and filed with a notary. It carries more legal weight than the previous version. Clara stood up. Her voice changed, cold now, clipped. He was medicated. He didn't know what he was signing. This is ridiculous. I stood too. Is that what you told him? I asked. That it was temporary? That you were protecting me? Her eyes locked on mine. And there it was again, that flicker. That flash of recognition. She knew. She knew this was real. She knew the game was over. But I didn't stop. You kept his phone. You screened his calls. You controlled his access to people. To me. And now I'm supposed to believe you didn't know what was in that envelope. Clara's lips pressed into a thin line. You don't know what you're talking about. No, I said. I think I finally do. Mr. Everett placed the envelope on the table beside the original will. The contrast between the two was jarring. One clinical, cold, lifeless. The other, marked by Owen's handwriting, his intention, his voice. And in that moment, the truth landed in the room like thunder. Owen had seen what I hadn't. Maybe too late, but just in time. The man I loved, the man I thought I lost to confusion and illness, had found one last pocket of clarity. And in that moment of light he reached for me. Not with flowers. Not with apologies. But with truth. And that, I realized, was the kind of love that endures beyond the end. There's a silence that doesn't feel empty. Feels charged. Like a room full of people holding their breath at the same time. That's what it felt like after Mr. Everett announced the second will overrode the first. The air didn't just grow quiet. It pressed down on us like a storm ready to crack open. Clara was the first to break it. This is absurd, she said, still standing. Her voice was louder now, sharper, as if raising it would make the truth quieter. You can't be serious. He was sick. He was barely coherent. That signature could have been anything. Mr. Everett didn't flinch. The document was signed 6 days before the will you presented. It was notarized with 2 witnesses and he held up a small flash drive. It includes a video of Owen reading and signing it himself. The words hit Clara like bricks. Her jaw clenched, but her eyes darted, once to me, once to the envelope, and then to the door, like she was looking for a way out. Anyway, but there wasn't one. I've been instructed to read the letter aloud, Mr. Everett said quietly. It was Owen's final request. I sat down slowly. My legs didn't feel steady anymore. Clara didn't move. He unfolded the handwritten page. It was creased and a little smudged at the corners, but the ink was clear. I could already see his scrawl from across the table. It looked like him, rushed but careful. Determined. Alive. Mr. Everett cleared his throat and began. To Mara. If you're hearing this, then something happened that I feared might. And if Clara's name has been read before mine, then I was right to fear it. I'm sorry. I didn't know how to stop what was happening. And for too long I didn't even want to believe it was real. But I see clearly now. I made a mistake. I let someone in who said they were helping. And in my weakness, I allowed that person to convince me that you would be safer with her in charge. That you'd be okay no matter what. She told me it was temporary. Just a precaution. But the truth is, she was taking from you. Slowly. Quietly. And I didn't stop it in time. I couldn't look away. Every word landed like a drop of rain on something scorched. Mr. Everett continued. Clara, if you're in the room, and I imagine you are, you should know this, you hurt me. You manipulated me when I was most vulnerable. You used my illness as cover. And you betrayed the very trust one gave you out of love. I hope someday you understand the weight of that. But Mara, my love, my wife. You deserve better than what I left behind. So I'm giving you this now. Everything that's mine was always meant to be yours. The room was still when Mr. Everett folded the letter and placed it gently back on the table. I could feel the air leave my lungs, slow and trembling. My hands were cold, but my chest was warm with something I hadn't felt in a long time, clarity. Clara didn't speak. She didn't need to. Her face had changed. The polished grief was gone. The soft eyes and careful tears replaced by something harder. Exposed. Like the light had finally caught the edges she tried so hard to soften. She leaned forward, knuckles white against the edge of the table. He didn't know what he was saying, she hissed. You saw him, he could barely string a sentence together. He knew exactly what he was saying, I said. My voice didn't shake. She turned toward me, something in her composure cracking. You don't get it. I was the one holding everything together while you fell apart. You didn't want to lead, Mara. You couldn't even get out of bed some days. I didn't argue, because she wasn't wrong about that. There were days I couldn't move. Days where I forgot to eat. Days I thought about what it would be like to just disappear. But I was still here. I was grieving my husband, I said softly. You were writing yourself into his legacy. The silence after that was deafening. Mr. Everett stood, gently pushing the amended will and letter toward me. Everything has been documented, authenticated, and filed, he said. If you wish to contest Miss Jennings, you'll have to go through formal channels. But I will tell you this, your chances are minimal. Clara stepped back. For a moment I thought she'd explode, that all her practice control would shatter right there. But instead she smoothed her dress, picked up her purse, and walked to the door. She didn't say goodbye. Not to me. Not to anyone. Her heels clicked against the hardwood floor like a metronome counting down the last seconds of her charade. And just like that she was gone. I sat there for a long time after. Mr. Everett offered me water, which I didn't take. He nodded once, kindly, and left me alone in that heavy, warm room where the truth had finally been spoken. I looked at the letter again, fingers brushing the edge of Owen's signature. It wasn't just ink. It was trust. And this time he had given it to the right person. There's a kind of quiet that comes after the truth is spoken. Not the peaceful kind, but the kind that hums beneath your skin like static. The kind that feels like it's waiting for a decision, for a breakdown, for a storm. That was the air in the room after Clara left her chair, purse in hand, dignity fraying at the edges. But just as she reached the door she stopped, her back still to me. I hope you realize what you've just done, she said, her voice low, even. You've undone everything we built. I blinked. We didn't build anything, Clara. Owen and I did. She turned slowly, her face composed, but her eyes, they burned. He was never going to leave you with that business. You were falling apart, Mara. You couldn't even keep up with invoices by the end. I was the one who made sure it didn't collapse. You mean while you were forwarding client calls to your own number? I asked. Her jaw tightened. Or when you started logging in as Owen, answering emails, signing contracts without telling me? Her silence said everything. I found the call logs, I added. You were rerouting everything. Even before his final hospitalization. You weren't helping. You were replacing. Clara dropped her purse on the chair behind her, stepping forward again like a lawyer preparing for trial. He was scared, Mara, she snapped. He came to me. He said you were distant. Depressed. Unavailable. That's what grief looks like, Clara. I said louder than I intended. That's what losing the person you love in slow motion does to you. But I never stopped loving him. I never stopped showing up. Even when I was barely holding myself together. She scoffed, a sharp sound that cut through the air. You think love was enough? He needed someone who could take action. Make hard choices. Do what you couldn't. You mean manipulate him while he was too sick to argue back? I said. Her mask cracked then just for a second. Her face froze. And in that stillness I saw something dangerous. Not just guilt, but entitlement. You don't understand, she said slowly, deliberately. I gave up everything for him. My job. My home. My time. I fixed what you couldn't. And he told me I'd be taken care of. And so you took care of yourself by writing me out of my own life, I said. By rewriting the story so you could be the hero. Clara crossed her arms, her voice colder than I'd ever heard it. He asked me to draft a new will. I didn't force him. But you guided his hand, I said. You fed him the words. And you hoped I'd be too broken to ever question it. She didn't deny it. She didn't have to. We stood in silence for a beat. Two women in the ruins of one man's legacy. Each holding a different version of who he had been. Then she said, You think that letter changes everything? No, I said. He changed everything. The moment he realized the truth and chose to act. Even if it was too late for a conversation, it wasn't too late for clarity. Her mouth opened, closed, and then finally she stopped pretending. I knew you'd find it, she muttered. I told him not to give it to you. I knew you'd make this ugly. You made it ugly the moment you decided his death was your opportunity, I said. For the first time she looked tired. Not angry. Not smug. Just worn. I did what I thought was right, she whispered. No, I said gently. You did what you thought you could get away with. Her eyes dropped to the envelope still sitting on the table. She stared at it like it might still change its contents. Like she could rewind this moment if she just looked hard enough. But she couldn't. You should leave now, Clara, I said. Before you say anything you'll regret even more than what you've already done. She gathered her things slowly, deliberately, and walked toward the door without another word. When it shut behind her, the room felt lighter. Not empty, not healed, but lighter. Mr. Everett entered a few moments later, holding a slim folder in his hands. She won't challenge it, he said simply. She may threaten. But legally, there's nothing she can do. I nodded. I figured. He sat across from me, quiet for a moment. Then he said, he trusted you, Mara. That letter, it wasn't just legal protection. It was personal. I nodded again. My throat was tight. But this time it wasn't from grief. It was from something deeper. Something steadier. Resolution. I picked up the envelope again and held it for a moment. The wax seal was broken, the contents read. But the weight of it still lingered. Not heavy like guilt, but grounded like truth. The funny thing about endings is, they rarely feel like endings. They don't arrive with grand announcements or cinematic closure. More often they come quietly. Like the soft click of a door closing behind someone who will never walk back in. That was how Clara left my life. No apology. No tears. Just silence. And in that silence, something unexpected happened. I didn't collapse. I didn't rage. I exhaled. For the first time in months I could breathe. Deeply. Freely. Like someone had opened a window in a room I didn't realize had gone stale. The days that followed weren't magical. They weren't even particularly productive. I didn't have some sudden burst of energy or creativity. What I had was space. And in that space I started to feel again. Grief, yes. Still there, still heavy. But also gratitude. For the truth. For the letter. For Owen. He had made mistakes, big ones. He let someone come between us. He doubted me when I needed him to stand beside me. But in the end, when he had nothing left but clarity and time, he chose me. Not just as his wife, but as the keeper of what we built. The one he trusted to carry it forward. And I did. It started small. I cleaned out the office, first physically, then digitally. I tossed the framed photo of the old logo, Jennings Design Group, and started sketching something new. Something that felt like mine. I changed the name to Lyra Studio. Inspired by the constellation. A symbol of navigation, of finding your way through the dark. It was what I needed to remember. That I wasn't lost. I was rerouting. I reached out to clients one by one. I told them the truth. Not all the messy details, but the heart of it. That things had changed. That I had changed. And that this business going forward would carry a different kind of energy. More grounded. More honest. More me. And they came back. Not all. But many. Some sent flowers. Others simply replied, "We've been waiting." That meant more than I can explain. I moved slowly. I said no more often. I started building boundaries I didn't know I was allowed to have. I let go of relationships that only ever worked when I kept quiet. I stopped explaining myself to people who never really listened. And somewhere in all of that, I found something else. Joy. Not the loud movie scene kind, but the quiet kind. The kind that creeps in while you're making coffee in a clean kitchen. Or when you realize you slept through the night without waking from sadness. Or when you laugh at something dumb on TV and catch yourself not faking it. I kept Owen's letter. It sits in my nightstand drawer. Next to a small silver pen he gave me when we landed our first major client. Some nights I read it again. Not because I need to, but because it reminds me that even when he was lost, he still found his way back to the truth. And to me, people ask me sometimes if I've forgiven him. Here's the truth. I don't think forgiveness always looks like what we expect. Sometimes it doesn't come with a hug or a tearful reunion. Sometimes it's just choosing to let the weight down. Choosing to walk forward anyway. Choosing yourself without apology. That's what this part of the story is about. Not revenge. Not even redemption. Reclamation. Taking back what was always yours. Not just property or titles or money, but your voice. Your truth. Your version of the story. If you're still listening, thank you. Truly. This wasn't easy to share. But some truths are too important to keep buried. And if you've ever trusted the wrong person, if you've ever doubted your instincts because someone made you feel small, just know this. You're not alone. And you're not powerless. You don't need an envelope to tell you what you already know. You are allowed to begin again. And if this story resonated with you, I'd love for you to be part of this little corner of honesty and healing we're building here. So please subscribe if you haven't already. Drop a comment and tell me your story, or simply say hi. We're in this together. And if you're ready, come join me in the next video. Because sometimes the most powerful thing we can do is write the next chapter ourselves. I'll see you there. Take good care.